we will now call the Plan Commission of November 9th, 2021 to order. Roll call, please.
Tatum here.
Sullivan here.
Grillo here.
Laura here. Kavich here. Zakowski here. Donnie here.
Super here.
Chandler here.
That will get us to the approval of minutes of October 26, 2021. If you'd all take a gander at that. Commissioners, when you're satisfied, motion please.
Sleeper moves to approve the minutes of October 26, 2021.
Zakowski will second. Roll call beginning with Commissioner Hanna. Sullivan, aye.
Grillo abstains.
Excuse me, Commissioner Hanna, your microphone is not on. Okay, Hanna, aye. Thank you.
Laura, aye. Kavich, aye. Zakowski. Donnie, aye.
Sleeper, aye.
Chandler, aye.
Okay, significant common council actions. Carrie, if you would.
Council approved the following: an ordinance rezoning the property at 9571 South 15th Avenue from RS3 Single Family Residential and A1 Limited Agricultural to A1 Limited Agricultural, no change to the FW Floodway and FF Flood Fringe Districts. Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Item 5 is Board of Housing and Zoning Appeal Actions. Did we have any over the last 2 weeks? No. Thank you. No action needed there. And item 6 is our quarterly Parks, Recreation, and Forestry Commission actions. Anything, Lori?
No.
Okay. That will move us right to number 7A, and that is a public hearing, to hold a public hearing on a proposed sign appeal on behalf of, for Lombard Electric, on behalf of Freighter Medical College, and it would allow the applicant to install various signs at 7901 West Drexel Avenue. So, Lori, you going to read that in?
Yes, Mayor, thank you. I always keep you guessing. I like it. Published October 27, 2021, City of Oak Creek notice of public hearing before the Plan Commission. Important notice. This meeting will be held both in person and by video conference. Persons wishing to participate in the video conference must register via the website prior to the meeting. The video conference will begin at 5:55 p.m. to allow participants to log in. Persons who wish to view the meeting live without participating may visit the City of Oak Creek YouTube page at the website provided. Persons requiring other reasonable accommodations may contact the city at 414-766-7000. Requests should be made as far in advance as possible, preferably a minimum 48 hours. A public hearing for a sign appeal will be held November 9th, 2021 at 6 p.m. in the Common Council chambers and via Zoom. The appellant is Zach Wegner. Text key number is 813-9056-000. The property location is 7901 South 6th Street. This is a request for variances from section 17.0334, part of the Drexel Town Square Mixed Use Plan Development District General Development Plan and Regulatory Plan, and section 17.0706 related to the number of wall signs allowed per elevation, the number of ground signs allowed per street frontage, and maximum dimensions for proposed signs. If granted, the variances would allow the applicant to install the following signs in addition to the permitted signs. Wall signs. North elevation, one wall sign 20 feet by 2 1/16 inch by 4 feet 11 inches, one 11 foot by 7.5 inch by 4 feet. East elevation, one wall sign 11 feet 7.5 inches by 4 feet. South elevation of the emergency addition, one wall sign 13 feet 5 3/4 inch, 3 foot by 3 feet 11 1/16 inch. East elevation emergency addition, 1 7 foot by 7 1/16 inch by 2 feet 8 inches. 2 feet 8 inch, sorry. West elevation, one wall sign 24 feet by 6 7/16 inch by 6 feet. Ambulance entrance freestanding canopy west elevation, 1 7 foot by 11 3/8 inch by 1 foot by 4 1/16 inch. Emergency addition south entry canopy. We have one wall sign 5 foot by 5 11/16 inch by 1 foot 3 5/16 inch. Another wall sign 7 feet 8 9/16 inch by 1 foot 3 5/16 inch. Emergency addition east entry canopy. There's one wall sign 7 feet by 9 1/16 inch by 1 foot 4 inch. Another wall sign 7 foot 3 1/16 inch by 1 foot 4 inch. Health center entrance freestanding canopy east elevation has one wall sign 7 foot 11 3/8 inch by 1 foot 4 1/16 inch. There's monument wayfinding and directional signs included in this proposal. One which is 5 foot by 5 foot 6 inch. Another one that's 5 foot and 5/6 inch. And then 3 1 foot 7 inch by 6 feet 6 inch directional signs. Zoning of the property is DTS, MUPDD, Drexel Town Square, Mixed Use Plan Development District. All interested persons wishing to be heard are invited to be present, dated this 20th day of October 2021. Plan Commission, City of Oak Creek, Wisconsin, Mayor Dan Bukevich, Chairman. This is a public hearing. All those wishing to speak, please step up to the podium, or for those participating remotely, please press *9 on your phone to notify the moderator that you'd like to be unmuted. Please state your name and address for the record and address all questions and comments to the Plan Commission. This hearing is now open.
Thank you, Laurie. And as Laurie said, this is a public hearing. We will make 3 calls and hopefully not make her repeat that. I think you just set a new record again.
Thank you. I get paid by the word.
Yes. So this will be the first call. Anybody wishing to speak? Second call in the public hearing. Third and final call. We will now close the public hearing and move on to consideration of that sign appeal in new business at 8A. So Lori, I'm going to turn it over to you and let you do the narrative.
Sure. Thank you so much, Mayor. I want to first start off and say thank you to Zach Wegner from Lemberg and also Samantha Rajek from Freighter to working with the staff to reduce the number of signs that were originally listed in that public notice. They have brought it closer in line with the general design guidelines for DTS. So what I'm about to present is actually a pared down list from what you saw in that public notice. So as we stated, this is asking for variances from section 17.0334 and section 17.0706. We pared down this request to 6 wall signs and the replacement of 2 monument signs. This is going to be the proposed sign locations. There are some additional signs shown in here that will be heard at a later date due to last minute changes in the plans. They did not fall under what was put in the public hearing notice, and therefore those will be heard on December 14th. Carrie, if you'd mind. So our first grouping of signs is from the east elevation, the emergency edition. We have 3 signs here, 2 on the canopy, emergency and the urgent care, and then 1 more at a pedestrian level, which is emergency and urgent care sign right there. On the next elevation, we have the south elevation of the emergency edition. So the only sign that's going to be heard this evening in this portion of the proposal is the emergency sign seen on the right-hand side of this diagram. The Freighter logo and community hospital sign will be heard in the December 14th meeting. This is the proposed south elevation of the health center entrance. This is just simply the health center sign over the canopy. This is the west elevation of the ambulance entrance freestanding canopy. So it's just going to be the ambulance sign. The proposed monument sign at Drexel, as you can see on the right-hand side, which is the existing, was only a little over 6 feet tall. The new sign is going to be proposed to be 8 feet tall to accommodate the emergency logo, which is up towards the upper portion of the sign. The second proposed monument sign on 6th Street is going to be the exact same sign that's proposed for Drexel Ave. So this will also be 8 feet. The previous sign was only 5 feet tall. And that's all I have for you, folks.
Okay. Just full disclosure, was it Friday? Friday, we did meet with representatives of Lemberg. Boy, is it echoing? It just seems really loud, eh? With Lemberg and Freighter. So this was a very very large packet that you seen the first time. And to the applicant's credit, we pared it down. It was kind of corny, but you know how you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. That's how we approach this, and this is how we took it. So what's in front of you is rather pared down as we continue to work through a couple other issues going forward as the rebrand of this addition and health center take place. So with that, Zach, would you like to say a few things before we start out?
Yeah, absolutely. So Lori said thank you to both my...
You need your name and address.
Oh,
yes.
sorry.
Yes.
My name is Zach Winder, 4085 North 128th Street in Brookfield, 53005. I am the project manager on this job with Lemberg. And Lori mentioned, thanking myself and Sam. However, I also want to thank you, Mr. Mayor, as well as Lori in working through this. Obviously, there's a lot here. However, understand that all of these signs are important and all of them serve a purpose. I've also asked some representatives from Freighter to be here, so they're here to answer any questions or concerns the commission may have. So feel free. Any questions, concerns, or issues, I'm here to answer them.
So we'll start with the commissioners, and again, I'm sure as we go, because we pared this down quite a bit, questions will begin to be answered. Some of them are very easily explained on why we do it, and we'll try to keep some kind of order to it if we're doing the canopies or the monuments and what have you. So everybody's so busy looking at their packet. Which side do we start from? Christine, you ready?
Yes.
Okay, Christine, how about starting us out?
I have no questions. It's just a lot of numbers.
It is a lot of numbers, and like I said, Lori really pared it down. So just to give you an idea that this drawing that is on, what we're specifically talking about is if you all identify and I'm going to work around the corner starting on the north end. So if you go to the northeast corner, that's the monument sign. Are the driveway signs in here? No, the driveway signs ain't in here. So the monument signs there where the cursor is at. And I know the public probably can't see that, or maybe they can. And then if you go to the next set, which are probably by the entrance with the urgent and emergency. Oh, that's the second monument sign.
So that will be the second monument sign.
Thank you. And then coming into the complex for the emergency and urgent.
It will be the health center canopy sign that Carrie's cursor is on. And then if you go a little bit to the left, you'll see EN04. That's where a little further to the right, Carrie, next to the canopy sign for the health center. It's in pink, EN04. That's going to be the urgent care sign. That will be facing east on the new addition. Then as you move southward along that addition, you'll see additional signage for the emergency center. And also there's a signage that says urgent care one direction, emergency care in the other direction. This is to basically separate out so that there's no confusion for patients to accidentally go into the emergency area over the urgent area and then end up getting charged more. So it's important to have this kind of signage here.
Okay. So in an attempt to keep this kind of on one topic at a time, let's start with the monument signs, and I'll come through the commission twice, and then the second time we'll go through the canopy signs, okay? So questions for the monuments?
No, I have no questions.
Okay. Matt? Dawn?
It looks like it's the same sign, except that it's got the emergency on the top, right? So it's going to be needed.
Correct. And that's what added the additional height.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
No real concerns. I know that we often talk about an abundance of signs and trying to kind of limit that. But obviously with the nature of this being a hospital, a lot of people visiting are going to be either in distress, an emergent situation where they really need to know where they're going right away. So I have no concern over the signs. I am assuming that even though there's an increase in height in the monument signs, that vision triangles were already looked at for traffics and pedestrians and things like that?
Correct.
Okay.
And these will be placed exactly where they are currently located, so that was already worked out when those were first placed.
Okay, then I have no concern.
Chris?
I have no concern. My questions were answered.
Don?
No questions.
Fred?
I have a question.
Yep.
I noticed on a lot of your signs, you have your logo where it's a medical college, Freighter Medical College. It seems like that's a little overkill. You got it at the beginning, at the entrance, you got it on your monument signs, you got them on the buildings. Do you need the half a dozen or 15, whatever you have? I don't know the exact number, but I've driven by it and I looked and you kept seeing it on the east wall, the north wall, the south wall.
Keep in mind, we don't do content.
Okay, I know we're talking,
Yeah.
I'm looking at the monument sign though, actually, that you did have your logo. And
Understood.
I'm just wondering, isn't that just a little overdoing it?
So the purpose of a monument sign in this regard, building sign serves one purpose, monument signage serves another purpose. The monument signs in this case are to essentially brand the entrances for Freightert. That being said, for example, WF04 on the south, that would be the southeast elevation, or the southeast entrance rather, it basically is denoting that driveway is the Freightert driveway. So I understand your viewpoint. However, having a monument sign without a brand on it, I feel would be confusing, especially since there's really nothing beyond that besides one little directional sign, which won't have branding anyways, on the very south elevation, if that answers your question.
I can see it on the north as you come in. You have it on your monument sign. I was just questioning on the bottom one.
I'm sorry, you cut out
The
there.
east one, I should say, the east monument sign. I just, like I said, you put your emblem on the top of that.
One thing too to keep in mind, especially with Drexel Town Square and the, I guess I'm going to call them high standards, because it's true. All the signs around here look great, and there's a reason for that. Many years have gone into it. If we have two different monument signs, there won't be that uniformity either. So you have one sign that has a brand that has branding on it on the north elevation, then you have the other sign on the south or the east elevation, as we're talking, that doesn't have branding. Therefore, it would look a little, in my opinion, it would look a little strange, kind of out of place almost. So I understand where you're coming from. However, that branding is integral part of the monument signs.
Just notice on the east side, though, when you come in and you look on the building, you got a big sign. It's a mammoth sign, and it's right next to your monument sign. So I just question it, that's all.
Understood. And I appreciate the question. And obviously it's all been taken into account. We have a great team back in my office as well as with Freightert. And we've all looked at this very in detail, and we've tried to make the most impact with the least amount of signs at this point. So that was also taken into account. And as you pull in that driveway from the east elevation, you're going to see the emergency cabinet, the urgent care cabinet. So you're not necessarily going to see branding as you pull in that east drive. The one you're referencing is right on Drexel. So you turn in to, 6th Street? And then you turn in the driveway. And once you turn in that driveway, you lose all that branding. So that monument sign will serve as the branding location for that entrance drive.
Is that Fred?
Yeah, that's it.
Okay. Chauncey?
I do have a question on the monument sign. Can you provide a little more information on if someone, when they see the signs, are there multiple ways to go, like to the left or to the right, since there aren't any directions or arrows on the monument signs, the proposed monument
That
sign?
actually will come in a future package. That's some of the signs we're not talking about tonight that we'll see on the 14th, the wayfinding signs.
Okay.
Am I correct in that?
That is correct.
Okay. And I asked that only because there were directions, or there are arrows on the existing monument signs. So that's being replaced with the directional signs. Am I understanding that correctly?
You are correct when it comes to saying that the monument sign no longer has those arrows on it. There will be directional signs that will be placed near the entryway, not on the corner on Drexel and 6th though. So that is a bit of a loss.
Yeah, and currently the reason for that, and we'll expound on that a little more on the 14th, but right now when you turn into that lot, there's really one entrance, and what's going to happen here is multiple.
Mr. Mayor, you're not on mic.
Oh, I'm not on mic. So we'll expound on that a little more on the 14th, but currently right now when you turn into that lot on the south, you're there, the entrances are right there, and it's one complex. It's a health center right now. Well, it'll be a health center, urgent care, and emergency, so there'll be some more wayfinding once you hit that lot, particularly with this new ambulance canopy addition. So kind of the gist of what kind of came out of our meeting. I learned a lot.
We're here to educate, Mayor.
Oh, that you did. Mission accomplished. So.
That's my question on the monument sign.
Okay. I mean, we're not going to motion. I'll just kind of weigh in a little more on these monument signs. So the monument signs are increasing from 7 foot to 8 foot. There's no change in the masonry base, the stone base. Basically, one of the commissioners said it. They're adding emergency on top. The freighter's going to the bottom. Proportionately, the address sign is also increasing with that. The address sign was something that was discussed, was a little bit of an issue for people finding it or seeing it, so to speak. And then again, you can see where, currently we got the urgent care, but the health center, the pharmacy, it'll all be on there. So it is a variance. We did a variance first time. And quite frankly, when I left that meeting, I went by, and the one immediately on 6th Street, if you look at it, has some tall fountain grass. I actually think it's an improvement, making it a little taller, believe it or not. So should make the sign people pretty happy there. So if there's no further questions on the monuments, we'll move on to the canopy. And Lori, if you want to just refresh everybody on these, maybe starting one or two at a time, however you feel we should take them. Because there's I think 4 of them that we're looking at tonight: the ambulance, emergency, urgent, and then that dual one, right?
6 in total.
Okay.
So we'll start off with that south elevation and the emergency addition. So basically just the emergency sign is what's going to be heard this evening. That's just going to be in the right-hand corner there. And then Carrie, if you don't mind. So this is the health center entryway. So there's a canopy currently there. And then they'll just be adding the health center sign over. This will make it easier, as when you're pulling in the driveway, you can literally park and see straight ahead to you that you have the health center entrance. And then to your left, you'll see urgent care. And then a little bit further to your left, you'll see the emergency area entryway. This is the ambulance entry, which is on the west elevation. This cannot be seen from the parking lot. This will primarily just be used to serve for our emergency services to enter. So this is the east elevation of the emergency addition. And again, this is where I was stating that when you're standing in the parking lot, you can clearly see where that emergency entryway is on the further southeast corner. And then the urgent care, which is a little bit further north on the east elevation. And then they do have a middle signage on the wall that says emergency and urgent care with directional signs. This is easier for people to see when they're being pulled or driving in and being dropped off at that entry point, so that they are not trying to see out and over and above the canopy sign. And that is all the 6 signs, the 6 wall signs that we have.
Okay. We'll start with questions from the commissioner. Chauncey, we're gonna come your way this time, right to left.
Okay, can you go over the signs again, the canopy signs? Because I just had 4, so I'm missing a couple. So with the sign that's on the screen now.
So we've got 3 wall signs right here. So emergency and urgent care. So those are actually on a canopy mounted over. And then we have a wall sign below that. That's the one with the directionals on it.
Oh, wait, before we move on. So we have the 2 signs, one for emergency, one for urgent care, and then a wall sign below that as well?
Correct.
Okay. And this wall sign is for emergency and urgent care, or just the emergency?
If you can see closely, there's actually directionals on it. So 2 arrows helping people who are walking up to see where the entryway is. So either left or right.
By DHS rules, and this is something I learned, they need to have separate doorways, an urgent care and an emergency room. Even though they could be probably connected inside internally, they need separate entrances and have to be distinguished as such, which is why the canopies. And then the directionals are, if you pulled up in the car and let somebody off at the curb, they'd be at ground level and they could look emergency to the left, urgent to the right. I think I said that correctly.
Perfect.
And the reason I'm asking this, because I know on our packet that we received, we have one section called Emergency Addition East Entry Canopy. So I am under the impression this is for the emergency and urgent care signs. Is that accurate? I'm just trying to figure out where the other 2 signs fall.
Sure. So I understand there's going to be a lot of confusion when you're looking at that public notice because we did eliminate so many different signs. So just on this east elevation, it'll show as 2 canopy signs and then 1 wall sign.
Okay.
And then I do have the dimensions on the PowerPoint slide for you to be able to match those up.
Got it. So the directional signs that say emergency and urgent care is considered 1 sign, not 2.
It is 1 sign.
Got it.
Correct.
Okay.
And all these cabinet signs, just to make sure everybody is clear on this, we don't normally allow cabinet wall signs. The difference with these is that we worked with Lemberg and Freyr to make sure that the wording is actually extruded 3/4 inch, so there is a projection.
Okay. So those are those 3, and then we have 3 more. Can you go over the other 3?
Absolutely. So we have 1 on the ambulance canopy that says ambulance. We have another canopy sign, which is going to be on the health center entrance. And then on the south elevation, we have another. Sorry, Carrie, I know I'm speaking relatively quickly here. On the south elevation, we do have 1 emergency sign. There is another entry point on the south side.
Okay.
So that would be 6 in total.
So can you go to the sign that was for the health center? On that sign, it had ambulance and health center. So will the health center be next to the ambulance sign?
No, these are 2 separate canopies. So 1 canopy is on the west elevation. That's only for the ambulance entry. Then we also have another canopy, which is on the south side. It's actually already existing. It wasn't part of the addition, but they're adding a health center sign on that. Unfortunately, we didn't have an additional diagram for it. So that's why you can see the arrow with the health centers. I was hoping to make it clear that we were just switching that. So,
okay. Thank you.
Ed?
No, I don't have any more questions. Thank you.
No, my only question is just to be 100% sure on the emergency entrance. So you, and the urgent care entrance. There we go. Oh, the one with the urgent care and emergency. There we go. So on the right there where, on our packet, you eliminated the freighter sign then, correct?
that is correct.
All right.
And we also eliminated the 2 pedestrian signs that were shown in that packet as well.
Okay, that's it for me. Thanks.
Chris?
No questions, thank you.
Greg?
No questions, thank you.
Nothing for me.
Matt?
I have nothing.
Christine?
Nothing here.
And I've been educated on this. I don't have anything on this one. So I think we've covered them all then correctly. So again, we'll be revisiting this site with different signs, wayfinding signs, and some other signs as well. I think we'll be there as they rebrand this and we work
Correct.
through those.
So on December 14th, they've submitted for a master sign plan review. And they also submitted for another sign appeal for another grouping of signs that were discussed at our Friday meeting.
Complicated. So I got a laugh out of them, but it was very productive. It was good. It was a good meeting. So if there's no further questions, I need one really brave soul to make this motion. And unfortunately, I think you're going to have to read all these elevations for the record, correct?
For your sanity, you're more than welcome to break it up. If you'd like to just do the monument signs in one grouping and then do the wall signs separately, or you can do it based on elevation as well.
Hold on, I'll step forward on one. If I have to, I can make it.
Lorick moves the Plan Commission approve the sign variances, allowing the installation of 6 wall signs and 2 monument signs at 7901 South 6th Street to include east elevation of emergency addition, 1 7-foot 7 1/16 inch by 2 foot and 8 inch, ambulance entrance freestanding canopy west elevation, 1 7-foot 11 3/8 inch by 1 foot 4 1/16 inch. Emergency addition south entry canopy, 1 7-foot 8 9/16 inch by 1 foot 3 5/16 inch. Emergency addition east entry canopy, 1 7-foot 9 1/16 inch by 1 foot 4 inch, 1 7-foot 3 1/16 inch by 1 foot 4 inch. Health center entrance freestanding canopy east elevation, 1 7-foot 11 3/8 inch by 1 foot 4 1/16 inch. And monument wayfaring and directional signs, 1 5-foot 0 inch by 5 foot 6 inch cabinet on existing 6 foot by 2 foot 6 inch masonry base, Drexel Avenue, monument wayfinding sign, and 1 5-foot by 5 foot 6 inch cabinet on existing 6 foot by 2 foot 6 inch masonry base, 6th Street monument wayfinding sign. So, I think you got
That
them
was
all.
perfect.
Way to go, Greg.
I'm impressed.
Holdani seconds.
Roll call, starting with Commissioner Sullivan.
Sullivan, aye.
Will I?
Lorick, aye.
Kavich, aye.
Guzekowski, aye.
Holdani, aye.
Separate aye.
Chandler, aye.
And I.
Thank you, Commissioners. That was a lot. Thank you very much. We'll see you again on the 14th. Continue to work through with staff. So we're all set going forward on the second part of this.
Yeah, like I said, I appreciate everyone's commitment to this and understanding the importance of these signs. So we'll see you guys next month then.
Great. Thank you very much. Thank you. That will get us to 8B, and that is a plan review, review site, building, landscape, and related plans submitted by Ken Kappelman, Stella and Chewy's for an addition to the existing building at 111 West Oakview Parkway. Carrie.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The current zoning of this property is M1 PUD. It is part of Oakview Business Park. It is a relatively small addition to what they're calling an engine room. It's on the southwest portion of the east addition, so it's kind of in between the 2 additions that we reviewed last year. It's in an alcove kind of area. The building materials are going to match the existing precast insulated concrete panels. There will be lights above each door, and they are proposing several RTU units that will be screened with metal screens. The addition itself is 173.5 feet long by 51 feet, And you can see here, it's in between the two additions as previously mentioned. So this is not actually going to be seen from any street, and it will be relatively screened from the property to the south as well. Minimal landscaping has been proposed. There is one new entry, kind of dual driveway to access this new addition. The landscaping is not concerning to staff. We're not asking for additional landscaping at this time. This is exactly what is going to be shown on the elevations. So what we're looking at here is the existing building. So that's the southern part. And then this is showing the proposed screening of those RTU units. Now it does look like it's a relatively large screen wall. However, we are considering it to be separate screening and not part of the building itself. So it is allowed to kind of exceed the height limitation a bit. And this is on the south elevation showing that screening, one overhead roll-up door and then one standard access door. This is what would be seen interior to that alcove. So this would actually be facing the west side of that existing building. There is a suggested motion for approval on the screen with a couple of conditions for Plan Commission consideration. Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Carrie. Before we go to commission, is there a representative? Would they like to say anything, or would they like to wait if any questions arise from Stella and Chewy's?
Good evening. My name is Dominic Ferrante. I'm with Brian. We're the architect for the previous work, and we're doing this addition as well for Stella and Chewy. And
I think we need your address as well.
3885 North Brookfield Road. That's my business address. And we have Ken Kappelman, who is the Vice President of Manufacturing at Stella and Chewy. And if you have any questions, we'd be happy to answer them.
Okay, great. Let's go to the commission right off the get-go. Christine?
Just one question. This is an engine room, right? Added to that existing structure, right?
I didn't hear. I'm sorry.
This is an engine room being added to the existing structure, correct?
Correct. Originally, they were looking at doing exterior modular units,
okay,
which would have been in that alcove, and they've considered now enclosing those rather than having them outside.
Is there any concern with noises to the adjacent
By putting it inside, you would basically eliminate that concern.
Okay, but there's nothing from outside that can...
Well, the outside would have the condenser units, which would be on the roof. Okay. Logistically, that's normally a gravity system, for gravity reasons that is set up that way. Internally, there'd be compressors, which are the actual engines. And those are, could be noisy, and those are inside the building now.
All right, thank you.
Sure.
Yeah.
I have no concerns.
On?
Nothing for me.
Fred?
No concerns, thank you.
Chris?
No for me.
Don?
No questions.
Fred?
No questions.
Chauncey?
I do have a question. So does this room already exist? You're just going to use it to put engines there?
They have an engine room already, which was constructed when the building was originally built, and it's towards the west side of the existing building. And this is an additional engine room to handle the equipment that was added in the east addition that we just completed. There's freeze-dried machines in there, and this will serve those freeze-dried machines. So they already have an engine room, which was built when the building was originally built. This is supplemental to handle new construction that was recently done. Originally, we were looking at doing modular units like we're in the court, in the alcove already, and this is just an alternative approach to it.
So with this additional room, does it require fire suppression, AC, any additional items?
The existing building does have fire protection, and this will have fire protection as well.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. Can I ask one question?
Yes.
The screen is fairly large, and the units that sit on the roof, the condensers, are large. We provided the screening because it's required, but if it's possible, I would respectfully ask if we could eliminate the screens just because of the logistics of such large screens. And if that's a possibility and a consideration, we ask if that's a possibility. We would paint the units then to blend in with the color of the building potentially, if you so choose to grant us the flexibility.
Interesting question, because my question was, it's screened on all four sides, correct? Or is it set back far enough from the north edge that it doesn't need screening?
Correct.
It's just the south end you're saying.
Right. Those were the views that we thought would be the ones that would be somewhat visible, so that's why we put it on there.
We require that all RTU units be screened. It's a code requirement, and we would not be in favor of eliminating the screens for this particular case.
I would agree with you, and I'm there too, but again, it's just a screen on the south side, correct?
It's a screen on the south and on the east. So it's really, it's screening from Howell Avenue.
Screen from Howell Avenue. Theoretically, you'd still see it as you'd come from the western part of no, the building's probably large enough.
Right. The building is large enough.
The distance hides it in the horizon, so to speak.
Yes.
Right. So the west elevation will not be, it won't be fairly visible when you're going through the park.
How about this for a compromise? You screen two sides, the east and the south.
That's what's proposed.
I figured it doesn't hurt just to ask.
And we'll call it a win. Okay, I have no further questions. Motion.
Seifert moves that the planning commission approve a site and building plan submitted by Ken Kappelman, Stella and Chewy for the property at 111 West Oakview Parkway with the following conditions. 1, that all relevant code requirements remain in effect. 2, that all detailed final plans are submitted in digital format to the Department of Community Development prior to submission of permit applications.
Hannah seconds.
Roll call, beginning with Commissioner Carrillo.
Carrillo, aye.
Lorick, aye. Bukavich, aye.
Zakowski, aye. Ladani, aye.
Seifert, aye.
Chandler, aye.
Hannah, aye.
Sullivan, aye.
Thank you.
Hey, thank you very much, guys. Appreciate you. That will get us to 8C, and that is a plan review, site building, landscape, and related plans for multifamily residential development on the property at 441 West Ryan Road. Carrie.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Plan Commissioners, you may recall that this was recently approved for a conditional use permit for multifamily residential development, and that's what we're here tonight to discuss the detailed plans for 118 units in 4 multifamily residential buildings. That is inclusive of the amenities that typically go along with multifamily residential developments. In this case, a clubhouse with a patio and grill area, water feature, playground, sports courts, and dog park, along with walking paths throughout that we will be discussing. So this is subject to the existing conditional use permit, and with a couple of exceptions, the proposed plans do fall in line with that conditional use permit. You will see at your stations that there were some updated elevations. The elevations that were printed were just a little bit dark, and this is lightening them up so you can get a better picture of what the design of those buildings look like. On the screen right now is the proposed site plan. There was an additional amendment to the site plan itself that's also included in your packets on your stations. There are no dimensions for that particular plan, so we'll just walk through it. Again, 4 buildings centered in the property, stormwater to the north, parking throughout. The 2-story apartment complex buildings have in each building end units for 4 townhomes. So those are the 2-story top townhomes that are going to be reserved on the corners. The 3-story are pure apartments. There are no townhomes in those options. The clubhouse, which is kind of on the southeast portion of the property, that's about 3,500 square feet at this point. In that site plan that's at your stations, they did adjust it to meet the side setback for Eagle Summit Road because it is a public roadway. It does have to meet the street setback, so that is 30 feet. And as we will discuss, the clubhouse is a little bit too tall, and there are some options for that. The clubhouse is really limited to a 17-foot high height restriction for accessory structures, as the primary structures are the dwelling units. And that's consistent with how we viewed clubhouses in the past, the exceptions for developments that have clubhouses that are taller are actually in planned unit developments. Those PUD conditions and restrictions do allow for more flexibility than we have with this particular conditional use permit. So just keep that in mind as you're reviewing this. Access is through the Eagle Summit Road, and we've discussed this too. Eagle Summit is a existing public street. This will be extended slightly. So when we're talking about the extension, it's going to, it currently curves into one of the access drives for the police department. It will be extended further south, terminating in a cul-de-sac. And there were some comments made by the engineering department that are currently in, let's say, some design modification plans that will require curb and gutter, specific lighting along the public roadway. They did add another inlet, so there are some changes that are not seen in the plans that you have, but the applicant has indicated that they are changing those as requested. There's one more emergency access, and that's in the blue square, or the blue rectangle on the northern part of the screen. You'll note that this is a connection to an existing driveway on the property to the west, which is Edgerton. This was actually preconceived and pre-deeded, if you will, through an easement with the current / soon-to-be former property owner many years ago. So this was something that was already anticipated as having a secondary emergency-only access point. This will be gated. And it's not unlike some other emergency access points that we've seen in developments that are only in the case where the ambulance or fire department would need to have that secondary access point. So they would be the only ones that could open the gate. It would not be allowed for just the regular use by the tenants. And you will note that there are walking paths again throughout the property. There is one requirement that is going to need to be met, and we'll work with the applicants to meet this. The walking paths as pavement need to be 5 feet from the property lines. That's per code. All pavement needs to be 5 feet off. That's also to allow for perimeter landscaping and such. So we'll continue to work with the applicant on those issues. If we talk about parking for a moment, what I've highlighted here are the underground parking areas, and it's a little bit of a unique situation. Each of the pairs of buildings will share underground parking access. And that's kind of in this, what looks to be a courtyard, but that's actually underground. There are going to be parking stalls for 80 units or 80 total parking stalls in the underground for each building. So it's 160 underground. The remaining parking is surface parking, and that's been reduced slightly from the original plans. They had to kind of forego, I think it was 14 parking stalls, 13 or 14 parking stalls, in order to accommodate that setback requirement for the clubhouse. Now, parking is calculated based on the number of bedrooms. So just to refresh your memory, studio and 1-bedroom apartments require a parking stall and a half per each unit. 2 bedrooms, 2 stalls per unit, and then 3 bedrooms or more, 2.5 stalls per unit. That would total about 212 required and 244 are shown in the revised plans. So they do exceed the minimum parking requirement, even with that reduction to accommodate the setback for the clubhouse. And this is the revised plan. It does not have dimensions on it, so it's a little bit difficult to get an idea of where everything is, but just to orient you a little bit, where we're looking for that setback is right here. So this was amended to push that clubhouse a little bit further west. Now, if we turn to the buildings, just a second here. The landscaping around the development itself may need to be revised slightly for code compliance, and we are asking for a little bit more consideration of landscaping on the northern side. We understand that's where the stormwater infrastructure is going to be placed. However, we are requesting that there be additional landscaping placed at the south end of that pond. The building architecture is basically the same for all of the buildings, but we're going to go by the 2-story, and then we'll group the 3-story. So buildings A and D, which are on the outside of the development, are going to basically kind of almost present as 3-story in some cases. But we'll kind of just go through all the elevations. This is the northwest and the northeast, and the west and east elevations. Now you'll see that there is a underground parking entrance on the west elevation for these buildings. And these are the interiors. So this is what's facing that courtyard area between the 2 buildings. 3-story buildings, the same kind of architecture, and the materials for all of these buildings include fiber cement, board, siding, and panel. We don't have percentages available for you at this time, however. They do also incorporate 4-inch brick, a stone base, which is also required to be a 4-inch thick veneer per code, and all the buildings incorporate dimensional or architectural asphalt shingles. And you will note that they have identified that some of these rooftops will incorporate solar panels. And just like the 2-story buildings, you will have that underground garage door access on the west and interior to the courtyard. Now, this is the proposed clubhouse. Again, it does exceed the height limitation of 17 feet. So there is an option for the applicant to request a variance through the Board of Zoning Appeals, or the kind of easier, relatively easier, and I use that term very loosely, option is to reduce the height to 17 feet. But again, the same materials. These are as the other buildings, the apartment buildings. So again, a roughly 3,500 square foot building. Now, you'll see that the columns are kind of mirroring on each side. One side will actually come out to a patio area. It'll be a little bit easier to see once we get to the renderings. The male pavilion, it's going to be 1 main kiosk. And if you bear with me for a moment, please don't get vertigo. This area, that is a pink box here, that's where the male is going to be consolidated. So that's where that kiosk will go. Now, again, these plans have not been updated. The parking has been slightly reconfigured, but this is where the general male area will be. Okay. That made it in there and I shouldn't. If anybody is concerned about what the materials look like, we have a materials board here, the asphalt shingles, the fiber cement siding, and panels in 2 different, although you can't really see it on this screen, slightly different shades. And then the different kind, the darker brick contrasted with the stone. And again, the brick and the stone would have to meet the 4-inch requirement per code. Turning now to the renderings, this is going to be the view presented to Ryan Road. So you won't really be able to see exactly that there is a stormwater pond immediately, but this is the 2-story building presenting to the road. And these are the interiors, the clubhouse. And that's how the clubhouse presents to the proposed patio, which will have fire pits. Now, the fire pits that have been proposed, those are things that are going to have to be coordinated with the fire department, depending on exactly what they're proposing there. Now, they're showing grill areas, but again, coordinate with the fire department for those requirements. And then south of that, you'll get an idea of what they're showing for some of the amenities. That's stepped water feature. It's not quite a splash pad because there's some relief there. It's not a pool. And then beyond that, they're showing playground areas. What you can't see is the continuation of the amenities along the south. Just a couple extra things here. Fiber cement requires a 3/4 majority approval of the Plan Commission, as we've seen in the past. There is a requirement for a minimum of 65% of the total exterior wall area of multifamily residential buildings to incorporate brick or decorative masonry. And of course, this is always up to the Plan Commission to determine whether or not what is being proposed is acceptable. There was one monument sign that was presented in the site plans. That's just for reference. There were no designs that were incorporated, so we'll deal with that whenever those designs come in. That will either need just a straight building permit, or a sign permit, or if the case is such that they need a variance, they would come back for a sign appeal. RTUs, or any kind of ground mechanical equipment, transformers, etc., not shown on the plans. That's pretty common at this point. Any of those mechanical units would have to be screened. We are not seeing any above ground trash enclosures. Those are all going to be in the basements. The parking garages have trash areas. So if there is going to be an enclosure for, let's say, the clubhouse, or if there are going to be exterior trash areas for anything, permanent enclosures would have to meet the code requirements in terms of siding, materials, etc. They would not be allowed in the front or the street yards, but kind of the park trash cans that you see around the square, if those are placed in, let's say, the playground area, that's not something that would need to come back for approval. Stormwater, the engineering department is currently working with the applicant on that, as previously mentioned. Grading has been accommodated for being outside of the required easements. There was in the rendering, and there was in the materials themselves, reference to fencing materials and a retaining wall. That would also have to meet height restrictions and design requirements. So we'll work with the applicant on those as well, and whenever they come forward, they will be in the final plans. So with all of that information, there is a suggested motion in 3 parts for Plan Commission consideration. Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Carrie. Before we go to the commission, would the applicant like to say anything, or make a statement, or just wait for questions?
Good evening. My name is Steve Pape. Rebel Investments. The address is 325 East Chicago in Milwaukee. Mr. Mayor, fellow commissioners, thank you for this opportunity again to present. We have the rest of our team here this evening. Jonathan Ward, development consultant with LTS Construction, along with Eric Harmon with AG Architecture, his team put together those pretty incredible drawings and plans that we're very, very excited about. So we're here, happy to answer any questions you all have this evening. Thank you.
I don't know which side we start off on. It feels like going. Christine? Dawn?
No, I think it's that side.
It's that side? Okay, Chauncey. I've been overruled here.
That's you.
I do have a couple of questions for the applicant. So can you provide a little more information in regards to the height to the clubhouse exceeding the 17 feet?
Guys will need your name and address as well.
Eric Harmon, AG Architecture, 1414 Underwood Ave, Wauwatosa, Wisconsin. I'll take the blame for the clubhouse height. Those other projects that were mentioned.
I don't think Mike's speaking up.
Those other projects that were mentioned were parts of PUDs that we designed other clubhouses for, and we got a little carried away on this one. We've talked with the applicant and our client, and we can make the 17-foot height work in a modified design.
Okay, and then questions in regards to the feedback you may have received from engineering about the cul-de-sac and street lights. Any feedback on those items?
As the designer, I can't necessarily speak directly to them, but we'll be following through and working with the staff to meet those requirements.
And then finally, with the stormwater modification.
Yeah.
Any feedback on that one as well?
You want to take that one down?
Good evening. I'm Jonathan Ward with Altius Building Company, 1675 North Barker Road, Brookfield, Wisconsin. In regards to the comments that we received from staff and from the engineering department, we will be able to make the accommodated requests for the storm sewer. There was a question that came back from our civil engineer in regards to the request that the retaining pond on the far west side, which is currently noted as a dry, the city came back requesting that that be a wet pond. JSD noted that that was created as a dry pond in order to comply with the city's infiltration requirement. And so they needed some more clarification on that as to what is needed there. But the other comments were things that we could comply with. We will also reconfigure the stormwater management area so that we're not regrading in the easement area as well.
Thank you.
Okay.
Any comments on the wet versus the dry pond from engineering?
Yes, well, this evening I spoke with our stormwater. That's based on the type of soil. So geotechnical is going to have to be done. I think Phil has spoken with JSD on that. They're working through that right now. If the soils do not allow infiltration, it'll go to a wet pond. That's pretty standard in the city here. Very unlikely you will meet that infiltration ability through the soil. So in that case, we'll move on, and that's one of the exceptions we have. Okay.
Thank you. No more questions.
Fred.
I have a question. Does the association maintain the roads themselves, or is that going to be tied in with the city and also with the garbage collection?
The extension of East Summit Drive, that will be deeded to the city, so that will become city road. The rest of the driveways will all be internal, will be private roads, and we will be responsible for all maintenance.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
That's
No questions.
Chris? I think it looks good. No questions. Greg? I have no questions either. Thank you.
Dawn?
Nothing for me.
Matt?
All of our concerns have been answered.
Christine?
Just one question. I know Carrie has mentioned the underground parking. How about the visitor parking? Is it like the surface ones or?
Yes, all the visitor parking will be the surface parking shown on the site plan.
They were calculated based on the number of units also?
Correct, and exceeded the required number of parking spaces as well. I will note, just this evening, our civil sent over another iteration of the plan, Carrie, that I sent over to you, just to reincorporate 6 of those parking spaces just north of, just to the west of the relocated community center. So we wanted to make sure that we could maintain as many parking spaces as close to the townhouses as possible so that people didn't have a long walk from the surface. So we're incorporating 6 of those back, and I'll provide those plans to you.
And while you're doing this, have you looked into pedestrian crossing, making sure the visitors going around, no hidden views where some conflict may happen between drivers and crossing pedestrian? I cannot really see it clear here, it's just so zoomed out, but.
Yeah, you'll notice on the site plan, the front entrance area, we actually put a island in between the lanes of traffic so that there's a walk all the way around the perimeter of the property, and where that walk comes up to the front entrance, you actually have that pedestrian island to help you cross over and reduce conflict.
Yeah, I guess if we have maybe, I don't know if a next plan or maybe detailed for later, just add some details, not from the entrance only, but from like building 1 and building 2, the 2 in the middle, especially going to the clubhouse, which is really not in the center. So it's so much to the
I don't see the arrow here, I'll just say to the east of that entrance. Yeah, some more pedestrian crossing and visual, side visual details needs to be shown, not just at the main entrance.
Okay.
Does this make sense? And maybe painted crosswalk painting or make sure the curb ramps are ADA applicable.
We will incorporate that.
Yep, that's it.
Okay. First of all, before I start, any concerns from fire at this time? Assistant Chief Havey? And, you know, this is obvious. Carrie pointed it out. You have that secondary emergency access. When I first thought we achieved that, I was going to say, boy, that boulevard counts as two entrances, but you can kind of enlighten me on that one.
Good evening, Mayor, Commissioners. Mike Havey, Assistant Chief of Fire. The question was specific to the emergency access. Yeah, we're satisfied with the secondary route for the access.
Obviously, that boulevard doesn't count as two streets then at the main entrance.
Correct. The other issue I think that was just brought up was the fire pit. So that was just we'll just make sure that the NFPA requirements, the National Fire Protection Agency, and the UL listings are correct for any of the outdoor appliances that are used.
And this is a question, I couldn't find it. I was paging through here. I know we're exceeding the 17-foot from the 30-foot setback from Eagle Court cul-de-sac on the clubhouse. How tall is the clubhouse?
The clubhouse is 23 feet, 24 and a half feet as currently designed. And they did move it, you can't really see it very clearly because there aren't any setbacks, but they did move it so that it does comply with the setback requirement to the right of way.
Okay.
In the plans that we received, we just received them today, so they are at your stations. It's what's on the screen right now. And the clubhouse is here. And the setback has been increased.
Okay, because I was going to point out that the male facility, or whatever you want to call it, the male canopy is 17 foot.
Okay.
I'm actually in favor of that clubhouse being a little grander and taller. So I'm glad to see they maintain that. So we'd be okay, correct?
No. We cannot, the issue becomes in a conditional use permit situation, we do not have the authority like we do in a plan unit development situation to grant variances, quote unquote. So the only way to exceed the 17-foot accessory height limitation would be to request a variance to the Board of Zoning Appeals. And that requires meeting certain criteria, including proving hardship. So that's a separate process. And as we've heard tonight, they are willing to kind of amend their clubhouse without changing too much architecture, I'm assuming, to meet that 17-foot height restriction.
That's fine. I'm sure they'll just pull out a couple panes of glass and shorten that whole deal. But, you know, considering that county land sits between the residents to the south and to the south of this, and to the east of it is our police department, and nothing's going there. Again, your call, but I think it looked pretty good that with the height, but. Boy, other than that, I don't have a lot of stuff going on. Materials, you got anything really weird you got to run by us that we haven't seen before?
There's the materials that are on the material board. I did bring in person. It is a dark. You technically haven't seen it before, but you've seen it on the elevations at the Shushuga Bond.
I mean, I was thought, you know, like LP siding, something like that.
Nope, we have
Doesn't meet our materials.
Yep, we are consistent with the submitted material. With the stone being 4 inches thick and the brick being a 4-inch depth as well.
So the only, Mr. Mayor, if I can kind of piggyback on your comment there, while we do have fiber cement on the buildings, we don't have percentages. So the Plan Commission is being asked to, one, approve the use of fiber cement as we've seen before, because that's what code requires. It requires a 3/4 majority approval for the use of that material. And two, code also requires 65% of the building, the exterior building, to be brick or decorative masonry. So that's another consideration for the Plan Commission to incorporate into your approvals tonight. We don't have materials so that you know how much of the buildings themselves are incorporating that fiber cement. But if you're satisfied with what's being proposed, we usually ask for percentages by elevation whenever we have these kind of variations. We just have not received that information at this time.
Okay. Thank you for that. Sorry, Eric.
No, that's okay. To the point of the percentage of fiber cement, we can certainly provide that information per elevation.
We commented on proposed look of it. We've been through this before. I actually think it's a pretty handsome look. At least in my opinion. Well, that's all I have from here. So if there's no further questions, discussions, we can consider a motion on.
Mr. Mayor?
Oh.
Mr. Mayor, there may be members of the public who would like to speak.
Oh, I'm sorry. Come on up.
Good evening, Mark Drager, 320 West Trillium Terrace. And you recognize me from the previous meetings on this. And I want to start by saying, beautiful design. First meeting looked beautiful, it looks even better now. I think it's a great design.
Yeah, it's pretty unique.
It is, and I've studied the drawings as much as I could here before the meeting, and everything looks wonderful. But I still have the two questions that I brought up in the first meeting, and that it's basically surrounds light pollution because of the sports courts and the playground and the walking paths and what have you. And I paged through here and I saw the lighting, very nice lighting packages that don't seem to extend out. They seem to shine down for the most part. So I like that. You guys pick some good fixtures. What I can't tell without a magnifying glass is where are they? So that's the first question is the amount of light towards the south side, which is bordering the residential area, and the light, I'll just call it pollution, the excess light that would come that direction. And then I had also, in conjunction with it, I'd mentioned some type of foliage such as arborvitaes are year-round blocks when all the trees lose their leaves. And I don't see anything here. Everything seems to be a nice variety of beautiful hardwoods that are going to lose their leaves in the winter and won't do any blocking. So I thought, I made that suggestion on the first meeting. I said, I'd like to see that. And so this is the first time I'm seeing your plan and I don't see that. So those were my two concerns. I think it kind of solves both problems. I think the lighting might be okay as far as I can tell, but I can't tell what light goes where. But the building lights, the wall wash lights, things like that are excellent. And even the pole lights, which were, let's see, I'll give it the name, the PAX and PB5 were real nice designs, which down lighting. So it's not like street lighting that goes all directions.
Oh, no. And
it's very nice.
By our lighting code, they always have cutoff shades to keep it, corralled to the property, so to speak.
Yes.
And then just to provide the adequate foot candles that are needed, whether it's a sports court, a walking path,
right,
or a parking lot.
So those were my comments, and I would like to see for our neighborhood some arborvitaes thrown in there with the mix of trees, so that gives you year-round. If there is any misadjustment of a light over time, things like that happen.
Okay, Mark. Let's see if first of all, the lights. If we can just kind of get a cursor up there for the general public. Kind of point them out where they might be. Keep in mind, they're going to have to meet all of our codes through inspection and design. So they're coming through the electrical department.
Sure.
Footage on them poles, they 15 footers, 20 footers. What are they? Any idea at this point in time?
We have.
You can turn the microphone on there.
All right, so we have 13 and 16 foot poles on the street lights, which are shining down. Those occur What you're seeing on the screen at the upper left-hand corner, which is the southwest corner of the site, where the sports courts are, there are 4 poles, each having 2 lights associated with them.
Okay, and they're going to be
those are the PB5s.
PB5s.
Yes.
Okay, that we see here.
And then the PA35s are actually at the street, and they're on the northern edge of the street as it's closest to the residential.
Okay, do we have the PA30? I don't see it in my literature here.
That's probably the PAX, and the X is the distinguisher for the final number, so it's the same head.
Oh, same head. Okay, good.
And then those would be both for the street and the sport court. That's probably a variation in the height overall then, just distinguish between those two. And then all of the bollards that are identified are at the resident amenities, which are closest to the east and the south.
And those look like that's this design, the edge here?
That is,
yes. That's a nice design, and I think I read 36 inches and...
Yep, and then shining down.
Yeah.
Yep.
So those are totally acceptable.
Those are all between the buildings, correct?
So, yeah, so I think it looks pretty good. I would just... Oh, I'm sorry. It looks very good, I think, from what you're explaining and what I kind of assumed. So I guess my only request would be, could you throw a few arborvitaes in there? And that would just be the icing on the cake. Other than that, I don't want you to spend any more money because you did a great job. You really did. And I don't think people normally tell you that, but I wanted to say that.
No, honestly, it's very nice looking project, very different. Without a doubt.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mark.
Thank you.
So that landscape plan, that'll get worked out with staff, and the forest. Is there anybody else before I, come on, go ahead.
Glenn Coolis, 420 West Trillium Terrace. And I also think it's a wonderful plan. I just have, you mentioned that this road, Eagle Summit, it goes right into the police department.
Yep.
And they said it might be extended.
Well, it's a cul-de-sac. It's shown as a cul-de-sac. Carrie or Matt, do you want to comment on that, please?
Yes, that'll extend up to their driveway, which I believe is probably anywhere from 50 to 100 feet from where it is now. And then it'll cul-de-sac in the end there, as we typically would there.
So this is the clubhouse? Pointing, yeah, right there, right there, okay. And what is this particular?
Got it, Glenn,
Gotta be on
the mic.
That particular boundary that's running right along the, what does that line mean?
He's referring to the previously identified easement for the right-of-way, which we are not using the extent of, but instead ending at a cul-de-sac.
The right-of-way extends along their entire property line to the south side of the police department property. They're actually not utilizing that right-of-way all the way to its extent. They're probably only using a third of it along their property line. So that'll just still be reserved as public right-of-way. Not saying that Milwaukee County will ever develop their land to the south, but if there's ever that potential, they have access to that property to the south. That's an unlikely situation, but it has to be provided.
Just for the record, I live right here, so I'll have a view of everything. I'm sure it'll look real good, but just concerned. I'll sleep better tonight.
Okay,
Thank you very much.
Appreciate it. Okay, anyone else before I? Okay. Commissioners, if there's no other questions,
I do have one additional question, and I believe this question is for Carrie. So since we don't have percentages of materials, do we have to add an item for the conditions?
Not if the plan commission is satisfied with how the plans are as presented. If the percentages are going to be provided at a later date, which staff would like to have just to have on file, but if the plan commission wants them to rule on them, then the plans would have to come back for plan commission final approval. So it's really up to the commission as to whether or not you want to make it a condition, and then hold your decision based on that percentage, or if you're satisfied with the plans as presented, you can certainly just make the motion and vote in the affirmative.
And my recommendation would be to have some type of percentages. Maybe we should hold that part, because normally we have an estimate of what the different materials are.
Oh, we normally will. Yeah, this is just my opinion, commissioners. I guess we normally would, but based on this and hearing no objections to what's been presented, I do think we should have the percentages on record. But if this was appealing to us now without knowing the percentages, how's it going to make it a difference coming in and they go, oh, you know what, you're 15% light on masonry brick and you make them put up a brick wall somewhere. Again, I think in some cases, and this is just my opinion, if it's that appealing to the eye, we can get it for record. But if I don't know. I just think it's a nice looking project. So I'll leave it at that.
So I would agree with the mayor that I don't think we need the percentages to vote on. So like I said, we'll get it for the records, but having the percentage will hold the process if 1 or 2 under percent or over percent is going to become a tedious portion. And especially, I don't think they will want to spend the time and the money to defer from that. So from my opinion as well, I think it's as it is today looks good, and we'll just go with what's being recommended.
I would be concerned without having the numbers to know if it's compliant or not based on the city's requirements.
I mean, it's up to the plan commission to determine whether or not the materials as proposed fulfill the code requirements. So I will say that in the zoning code update, while we can't apply those standards here tonight, fiber cement is not a requirement for a 3/4 majority approval any longer as proposed. And we've seen fiber cement used as a primary building material on several proposals in the most recent past, and including recent multifamily residential developments. I would agree with you, Commissioner Chandler, that we do need to have the materials percentages, but as I'm hearing from the Plan Commission, there aren't any concerns for the designs of the buildings, and therefore staff would be less concerned if the Plan Commission were to decide that these are appropriate to move forward on a decision tonight.
So let me ask another question. Are all the materials that are being proposed compliant?
When you say compliant, they are listed in the code. So what they're requesting are brick, stone, and fiber cement. And fiber cement needs a 3/4 majority approval of the Plan Commission. Mr. Mayor, you're not on the mic again.
I'm sorry, because we're updating our code and it was never listed as a material back when we did them.
In the code right now, it states specifically that fiber cement requires a 3/4 majority approval. It doesn't prohibit it.
Thank you.
Oh, okay. Thank you. So commissioners, do you want to make a motion as stands?
Yes, I'll make a motion.
Go.
Guzikowski makes a motion that the Plan Commission approves the site and building plans submitted by Steve Papp, Revel Investments, for the property at 441 West Ryan Road with the following conditions. 1, that all relevant code requirements and conditions of conditional use permit remain in effect. 2, that all outdoor grill areas and proposed fire pits are reviewed and approved by the fire department prior to submission of permit applications. 3, that the plans for the clubhouse are revised to meet the minimum 30-foot setback to all public rights-of-way and the minimum 17-foot restriction
height restriction. 4, that the plans are revised to incorporate comments regarding street lighting placement along Eagle Summit Drive, a temporary cul-de-sac easement on city property, and the curb and gutter requirements for the new cul-de-sac prior to submission of permit applications. 5, that the plans are revised to include 5-foot minimum setback to all property lines for pavement. 6, that the exterior brick and stone veneers meet the minimum 4-inch thick requirement per code. 7, that the landscape plans are revised to meet all code requirements prior to submission of permit applications. 8, that all mechanical equipment, transformers, and utility boxes, ground building, and rooftop shall be screened from view. 9, that all storm water, and sanitary water sewer requirements are coordinated with the approved by the engineering department and Oak Creek Water sewer utility prior to submission of permit applications. 10, that all revised plans, site, building, landscaping, etc., are submitted in digital format for review by the Department of Community Development prior to the submission of building permit applications.
Seifert seconds.
Roll call, beginning with Alderman Lark.
Lark, aye.
Kokavich, aye.
Guzekowski, aye.
Ladani, aye.
Seifert, aye.
Chandler, no. Anna, I.
Sullivan, aye.
Okay, got them all. Thank you very much, guys. Appreciate it. That will get us to, was that 9C? That was 9C. Get us to 9D.
8C, Mr. Mayor.
Oh, 8C, thank you. 8C. No, we're on 8D, right?
8D. I have an error here. My apologies. 8D.
Okay, 8D. Yeah, this is a consultation. Discussion of potential mixed-use development concept at the properties at 9102, 9120, 9140 South 27th Street. Carrie.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is a development concept that we have seen previously. The applicant has requested that the Plan Commission review a revised concept based on some comments that were received. As a reminder, this is in an area that kind of has these long parcels along 27th Street that are extending into the backyards of quite a few existing residential properties. The proposal that we have seen in the past is, again, for mixed use for a building on the 27th Street side of the properties that would be multi-story with some residential and a portion of commercial on the first floor. However, there is parking that is proposed both on the first floor as a garage and underground. So that is a concept that we've not quite seen before, although depending on how the building is designed, you may not notice it. The retail is about 10,000 square feet. It's been reoriented to the south and east, and the proposal is to have 90 apartments on the second through the fourth floors. Now, that is an increase from what was seen in the previous approvals, or I'm sorry, in the previous consultation. Townhomes that have been presented on the east, again, increased from the 18 that were seen in the previous consultation to 23. We do, however, have quite a few changes. So to refresh your memory, this is the concept plan that was presented in August with the access along the north and the building for the mixed use portion on 27th Street oriented to the south, and the townhomes kind of in a cul-de-sac configuration on the east with stormwater detention and those wetland areas in the center of the property. What's being presented for comment and input tonight, that building has been reoriented so that the L shape is now facing 27th Street with the parking interior. But a major consideration is the proposal for that access road, which would be private in this configuration along the south end, terminating in a cul-de-sac with the proposed townhomes on the east side. As part of staff's initial comments on this layout, we asked the applicant to incorporate a landscape buffer that would be maintained along the north, the east, and the south. And that is shown within that 50-foot setback for the entirety of the buildings and a portion of the access to the garage on the north side. And at this point, staff is going to turn it over to the applicant and their consultants to give an overview of what they are requesting.
Evening, guys.
Good evening. Jason Christensen, Nielsen, Madsen and Barber, civil engineer for the applicant here, 1458 Horizon Boulevard, Racine, Wisconsin. Thank you, Carrie. Mr. Mayor and Commissioners, we came before you about 2 months ago. Carrie showed the concept up there. We got your initial feedback, very good comments. We took that along with concerns from DOT as well here. In the revised concept, just wanted to point out a few things. We did shift that site access to the south of the property here. So now we're a little bit closer to halfway between Briarwood Drive and Hilltop Lane here. There was some concern before with the driveway being to the north, being a little bit too close to Hilltop Lane. One of the other big changes here is the orientation of the building. So before, the building was kind of spun around in a slightly different configuration. Here we have aligned the building so that more of the frontage was along 27th Street, really providing more of that commercial appearance along 27th Street. Having the parking in the rear of the building, that's where all of the customers would be entering those commercial spaces. But the intent would be to have some signage on the 27th Street side of the building to kind of make it look like a commercial frontage or facade along 27th Street. Really to draw the people in there and realize that there are those shops there, because the actual entrances would be kind of hidden on the back side of the building. Outside of that, we do have the amenities that we added to the site here. Those will include tennis court, gazebo, pavilion, playground, walking paths kind of throughout the site. There's the wetlands down in the middle of the site, so we're envisioning some walking paths through there, kind of some nature trails, if you will, maybe some, wood chipped paths, something like that. That'd be kind of nice to take some walks through the middle of the site there. Outside of that, any questions you might have, here to answer.
Before we go to commission, I'm sure we have some residents here. If you'd like to come up at this time, please feel free. And then we'll go to commission. I know you guys have been waiting. So name and address, please.
Good evening, everybody. I'm Marvin Hunt, 2537 West Hilltop Lane. And my property line is on the south side of my property. My concern was they were talking about we're looking at the map tonight, my wife and I. And it's called a public drainage easement. Now, what is that all about? It's supposed to be pretty close, but not too far from the back of my property, our south side property.
I'm looking.
What that might be.
Right now,
good evening, gentlemen.
I would imagine it's for stormwater control, but
yeah, it's not like a retention pond or anything like that, is it?
Oh, no wonder.
This is a mosquito infested thing. Yeah. I worked for the city and had to clean up, but so I know what that's all about.
And Matt, what would that exactly kind of be? Would that just be a change in like a bioswale? You see what we're talking about?
Yeah, so I can kind of speak to that. So we pulled the title report for those properties. That drainage easement shows up. We're not sure why it's there. Maybe there was a tile back in the day that used to feed through there. To our knowledge right now, there's nothing within that easement, but the easement is still on record on that property.
Makes sense, man.
I'd have to do some research on that to be able to answer that question with certainty. So I don't want to just give you an answer and not have.
No, that's fine. I just
with it. So
and it's nothing that we're proposing. It's something that exists on that site already.
No, okay. And my other questions is how far is the building off the south property? I mean, it says 50 feet. Is that 50 feet from the south property, along with the parking lot, which is 15 feet? Or am I reading the map wrong here?
The building along the south property line?
Right.
Down there?
Yeah.
The building is 80 feet.
80 feet.
80 feet off that south.
Okay, and how far is the parking lot? I mean, that's right near the south.
Yeah, the parking lot, that driveway access is 15 feet off the property line.
15 feet, that's what I thought. Okay. And what's your plans for landscaping? I'm hoping, like I said, gentlemen, for this place on Brian was talking about arboritis and evergreen stuff like that, because I do enough raking of other people's leaves. I don't need any more. I just evergreen and stuff like that would be kind of nice along that area. You know.
Yes, sir. We can take that into consideration here. We have not developed a landscape plan for this yet, so that will come in due time here, and we can certainly take that into consideration.
Yeah, not that I'm happy to see a four-star building going up. I'd rather see the 10-point buckle I had this morning running in my backyard, but.
You know, they have a very abundant, what do they call, Woodland Preservation preserve along the northeast and south. Hardwoods, that's a lot of stuff to put in there, so remains to be seen. Sorry, gotta be on the microphone.
What was that? I'm sorry.
You have to be on the microphone.
Yeah.
4 stories, she was asking.
Oh,
yeah.
Why is it 4-story?
Yeah.
And, you know, this was going to kind of go into my question. Along 27th Street to 27th Street streetscape PUD, we require at least 2. I would imagine it's for the density, but can Carrie, either you or the applicant can cover that?
I can't speak to why a 4-story building is proposed here, but it is in the overlay district for the 27th Street corridor. What is proposed is first floor retail, and part of the first floor would be parking, and some of the garage parking would be sub level, with floors 2 through 4 proposed for residential. That's just what's being presented as a concept for right now. It's not a requirement for them to have 4-story buildings along 27th.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Anyone else?
Good evening. Fred Plasek, 2401 West Hilltop Lane. When you mentioned the 50 feet, what is this going to be, some kind of buffer zone, or what? From our south lot line, I'm on the south side of the street also with the Hunts. What is being proposed there?
Are those our setbacks, Carrie?
I mean, is that like, is this going to be landscaping, or is there 50 feet set aside as you had mentioned a buffer, or what's
like a berm of sorts?
So what's shown in the concept plan, and I will defer to the engineers for additional details. Multifamily residential buildings must be located at least 50 feet from a single-family residential district line. What they are showing on the screen is a woodland preservation area within that 50-foot buffer, because staff did recommend, and it was a very strong recommendation, that there be a vegetative buffer along the north, the east, and the south as it kind of curves around for the single-family residential district line. So that's what's being shown on the screen. We don't have any kind of detailed landscape plans for that area. We did ask them to kind of increase the vegetation. That looks like there's a little bit of a gap between what's existing on that northeast corner, and that's what they're showing as a placeholder here. So until we have detailed landscape plans, what this is showing is an area for there to be not only a setback buffer, but also vegetation to be within that 50 feet.
Yeah, as Carrie said, the 50 feet that we're referring to, that is the building setback that we have. Within that 50-foot building setback, we are proposing a woodland preservation area that might range from 25 to 30 feet, kind of depending upon how the final grading works out around the perimeter of the site. So our intent would be to leave any, large, good quality specimen trees that are there within that Woodland Preservation easement, if there becomes some bare spots, in between, we can certainly add some additional, vegetation in between some of those areas. But it would be the intent to leave a strip out there of what is there now.
All right. And then the other question is, the development on the east side, the road that goes all the way back there, there is no intention of punching through another access point to that development. It's just going to be, they're going to come off of 27th Street and drive that 1,000 or 1,200 feet back to that development. That's it. There's no other plans to punch a road in somewhere, somehow.
We have no intention of that. The client does not own any additional property over there. Their intent is to develop this property.
This discussion came up many years ago when the Hilltop Lane area, the development name escapes me, when it was punched through to Tanglewood because it said the fire department requires 2 access points to any kind of development. Well, it seems to me those people back there, I just don't want something coming up later saying, "Oh well, we gotta punch an access road through here to Hilltop or something."
And this is conceptual, so I mean, Assistant Chief Havey's here; he'll weigh in on it because there's a certain distance I think cul-de-sacs can go back, but I'm not versed on that. Mike, if you could help us out, please.
And while Mike is making his way to the microphone, I will say that WSDOT also has to weigh in on these plans, as this is in the 27th Street Access Management Plan corridor. So they would have to look at the connectivity in the area and make their recommendations and or approvals for all access points to 27th Street and connectivity as per their plan.
So, yes.
Good evening again, Mike Havey, Assistant Chief Oak Creek Fire. The proposal that we reviewed earlier, there are some changes that is still, the structures that are presented, if they are 4-family or greater unit buildings, would require sprinkler systems in those structures. So from this concept plan, if the number of buildings is less than 15 on a cul-de-sac, typically in residential, that's the requirement. It's no greater than 15. But the structures, the way that they're presented, if they are 4-family units, then they would be approved.
Because they're sprinkled.
Because they're sprinkled. And that's just kind of preliminary with, the water service and utility, that would also have to maintain the water supply that on this cul-de-sac, we'd have to approve that through water, and sanitary would have to weigh in on how that is. So, in concept, it's possible, but there's still.
Can you make a redundant loop on that for water?
There may be a need for that. I can't speak on the water utility side of things, but that's highly probable.
Okay. So again, conceptually speaking, it's possible, I guess.
Correct.
Okay.
Then just another comment. It seems like the first time we saw this a couple months ago, it has grown in scope. Again, now we're a 4-story building. There were a few townhouses down in the end, and now it seemed like did it double in units? Was 12, and now it's 18, or?
Yeah, I believe before we were showing 18 and we are now showing 23. The building itself has always been the 4 stories. Due to the reconfiguration of the building out by 27th Street, we actually lost about 3,000 square feet worth of commercial, just in order to get that frontage, that long portion of the building up against 27th Street. So that reduction in commercial was made up for with additional residential units in the large building up front. The reason for the additional units in back, we're providing several amenities on this site, and there is a long driveway or a private roadway in order to get to the back, which is very costly. So we are trying to make this project work, and with that, we needed to add a few units in the back.
So that road is private? It's not the city taking care of it? It's going to be privately snowplowed and all that?
It would be private.
Now, the zoning is not, again, I remember from 2 months ago, is this zoned for this, or is this would have to be changed to accommodate this development?
It would have to go through a rezone. There would have to be multiple, reviews that the plans would have to go through. They'd have to combine the properties, they'd have to rezone the properties, they'd have to amend the comprehensive plan in order to allow for the types of uses. Actually, the comprehensive plan amendment has to come first before anything, because if the city does not feel that the comprehensive plan should be amended from the single family detached, or what we traditionally call like duplexes, side by sides, those kinds of units, single family attached, if the city doesn't feel that amending that to whatever the proposal would be, that pretty much stops any rezoning, because rezones by statute have to be in conformance with the comprehensive plan. So first step is comprehensive plan amendment. Second step would be to combine the properties and ask for them to be rezoned. And in this particular situation, my guess would be that there would be a request for a plan unit development if it meets the minimum size requirements for the land. So there's several reviews that this would have to go through. And that's before we get to the architecture and the site plan itself.
And we would be made aware of any of this, right?
Anything that comes before the plan commission with an application will have notice to the neighborhood, yes.
Right. Thank you.
Anyone else? Yes, ma'am. Name and address, please.
Mary Hunt, 2537 West Hilltop Lane. I totally disagree with 4-story buildings behind my 2-story house.
On it.
Put some single condos up. Seniors would love it.
Love to see more condos in the city, but
Yeah, single condos would be great.
It's really the developers.
Got enough apartments back there already. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, let's go to commission. Christine?
Yes, it's not really a question more than a comment. Especially 27th Street is being developed to be like a high business entity and also appealing to a lot of residents. 4-story on 27th Street, especially garage on the first floor, is not a really good aesthetic appealing approach. So if that would be the case, if it's needed per requirement for a number of residents or condos or whatever that may be called, it's not a good place for it to be on 27th Street. It needs to be relocated elsewhere. So that will be my strong opposition of this.
Is that it, Christine?
Yes, it is.
Matt?
I guess one of our bigger concerns on the 23 townhomes is the service of the sanitary. You won't be able to get the service out of 27th Street. You're not going to get the depth. So the bigger question is, how do you plan on providing utilities to the rear of that lot? That's going to be the bigger question for you guys on whether that's even an ability or an option. You're surrounded by private land. That's going to be some issues moving forward. So, if this does move forward, you're really going to have to look deep into that on that case. So that's going to be one of your probably your biggest hurdle, is being able to provide that, and also the looping of the water. If water and sewer does require that, how are you going to loop that out and around? So you're going to have to really look deep into that as far as servicing those back portions. So that's one of our, that's just the way it is out there, I guess.
Yeah, and that's understood. There are water and sewer in the development to the south that provides us at least an opportunity. It's something we have to explore a little bit further here, but there is public water and sewer in that development to the south. So that's an option that we're exploring for that.
Yeah, just as long as you're understanding where you would have to go with that, and if this does move forward, make sure you work closely with water and sewer on the sizing and where that water would go in sewer.
Is it possible to have one more comment?
Briefly, Fred, because we're up to Commissioner.
I know. Fred Plasek, 2401 Hilltop Lane. Last meeting, I believe, Mayor, you had stated that, and maybe it was because of the DOT on 27th Street, that there's no possible way that they can punch through the Hilltop Lane. I heard the comment said it was dead on arrival or something, that you know, they couldn't buy a house. We have terrible traffic problems in our subdivision. Those people from the apartments come racing through. I watched one of my neighbors get hit by a car and go flying. The last thing we need is any more traffic, where all those people having to go back to that development have to come down Hilltop Lane and turn in there. They you know, tear down a house or something, and I just vehemently oppose that. Okay. That they would ever be able to do that. So thanks, thank you for your time.
Dawn? Just a comment. I like the idea. I think it uses that land very well. Of course, we'd have to see what the 4-story apartment building would look like before we could go forward. But I think it's a great concept.
Greg?
Just a couple comments, I guess. I am not a developer and I don't design these, so I'm not trying to offend anybody by the design. I'm just curious as to, I know that this is an apartment complex and there'll be residents there, but there's also retail. And then I noticed that there's a gazebo and tennis courts, which seems kind of close to a busy retail area. I don't know how many people are going to be coming and going from that area. Not a concern of mine. I'm just a little confused by that. As far as secondary access, I know it was brought up on the last development that we just saw. There was the emergency access only that they had. I don't know what the rules are, or if there'd be any possibility with some type of an arrangement to the south with West Lakewood Lane.
Private road
somehow.
If you get an easement,
connect privately with an emergency access to that. I don't know if that's even an option, but that could be a secondary access point. So, other than that, I don't
know. Chris?
Well, this is my first kick of this cat because I was on vacation when this was brought about in August. This is in my district. And I had not had any conversations with anybody that has brought the plan forward. Right now, as it stands, it's the Woodlands Preservation. There are positives there. Right now, if there's connectivity issues where you got to go through to the subdivision on the north side, I could not support that. I could not support the 4 stories. I just think that that's too much density for the residential look that's there to the north of the property. Really, the other things is if you have some type of berm that's on the north border, that's definitely going to help soften the blow. I don't know if it's going to be a berm or if it's going to be, when you say woodland preservation, I interpret that as you want to preserve the existing woods. Is that
that would be the intent.
Okay, all right. Then I think that is something that's a good use of reusing the existing woods that are there. So I think that would be an asset. But I don't know how much that's going to, depending upon how thick it is, how much it's going to screen or shield the neighbors to the north of the in the subdivision to the north on Hilltop. So those are my comments.
Thanks, Chris.
The one thing, excuse me, Assistant Chief Avey, I guess I didn't understand. Can this avoided? Can a second entrance be avoided?
I know we talked about sprinklers, and then I kind of lost it there, and it didn't seem like there was a definitive answer to that.
Sure, Mike Avey, Assistant Chief with Oak Creek Fire. As far as the buildings and the number of buildings that are on a cul-de-sac, the way they're laying it light out there's more than 15. But the structures are individual. That is a number of 15 where it drops off. But if those are 4-family units, then they would be fully sprinkled buildings, and that number would be if they're, because I've only seen the concept plan, so I'm not sure if there's how many buildings actually that would be, if it's 3 or 4 or 5.
Yeah, right now we're showing 4 buildings, several of them being 5-unit, and all of those buildings would be sprinklered.
Because again, this is some concept so that the protection that the buildings have for versus the secondary egress or access for the fire department. It's important to have fire prevention measures in place so that those buildings are protected.
As long as they're connected and sprinkled, they're considered 4 buildings. No secondary access would be needed.
Yeah, depends on if the measurement of the length of the cul-de-sac as well. So as it's proposed now, the distance is going to be calculated in there as well.
Okay, it just sounds like this ain't quite over yet.
That I would agree that there are things that need to really be revised or firmed up before. So it's possible, but I don't think it's quite there yet.
Okay, yeah, this is going to be. I can sense it already. It's going to be a fight, and they're packing a lot into a sliver. And I think I made the same comment before. And a lot of challenges, and we're a long way away. But I don't want anybody walking out of here thinking there isn't going to be a secondary access when it is possible. And so we got a long way to go. I just want to be, clear on that.
Yeah, correct. Because this is a conceptual plan, so, there's really no definitive point that we've made yet to get there. I hope that answered your question.
It did. Yep. Thank you very much. Thank you. That's all I have, yes. Ed?
Everybody's asked the same question I've had. But one of the concerns I still have is the utilities, the water and sewer hookup going to that. We're stretching, the water and the sewer to get to that development. And I'm just wondering where you're going to hook into it.
Yeah, and like I said, there are utilities in that development to the south that we have the potential to get to. Obviously, that is something that has to be worked out and agreements made, but there are utilities available down there.
And of course, I still go along with the second access. Some question with that. Something does happen. We need to get an emergency vehicle in, not fire, but an emergency. We could have a potential problem. So that's my comment or concerns.
Thank you.
Mr. Chandler.
I do have a question. It may be for the applicant or Carrie. So I noticed that the roadways, they go over the wetland areas. Is that acceptable?
DNR would have to be involved for any wetland fill permits.
Yeah, we will have to obtain wetland fill permits from the DNR and the U.S. Army Corps.
Thank you.
Okay. I'm last, eh? Okay. Most of the comments been made. Very challenging site, but I will applaud the applicant and everybody. Obviously, you came in, whatever it was, 2 months ago, road to the north, and we were like, man, it's got to go south. Quite frankly, I'm surprised you guys are back here. I don't mean to chuckle or anything, but it's a very challenging site. We got some wetlands involved here. We got the single access that we pretty much exhausted. I do like the building front facing 27th Street. But this is, as Don said, it's going to be a work in progress a little bit. We got utilities to work out, lots of stuff like that. But, you're good listeners. The Woodland Preservation thing, I think, is huge for something like this. Ultimately, safety comes first. And Fire's going to dictate, and what's going to happen with that single access. Greg had a suggestion, and I don't even know if that's viable, but to connect up with the apartments. And just out of curiosity, I mean, we don't like to start at no, we can wind up at no. So I mean, we like that, you're taking a good hard look at making use of some of this property. If by chance the east portion where we're showing townhouses, and this is just conceptual, the apartment complex approached you and said, hey, we want to buy that up and stick some more apartments and extend our apartments to the north, they would just connect parking lots and pop the buildings in there.
Well, I think that a suggestion like that is a bit more nuanced than that, because it would have to go through so many reviews in order to get to that point.
As does this development.
Correct.
As does this development.
Correct.
I guess my thing is, when we get into single entrance or dual entrance, when you do something like that and just say they would connect these via parking lots, when it comes to fire, I mean, we're probably in the same distance as that road. And I understand the road goes down, but the parking lots could be just as jammed to get into those buildings, yet they'd be a couple of buildings sprinkled. So we're sort of in the same situation a little bit. I don't know. They have no intentions of doing that and don't think it's going to happen just because I made this up. I probably should have let it. And to wrap my.
You're not on mic again, sir.
What's that?
You weren't on mic again for the last part.
Oh, really? Oh, okay. So anyways, don't take that as gospel. It's going to happen. I'm just trying to wrap my head around it. The difference between our protective services scooting between the parking lots to get to those last let's just say they put 3 apartment buildings back there that were sprinkled, obviously over 4 family, and they connected it via parking lots. I mean, granted, the complex has 2 entrances, but those 3 buildings basically have one way in. I don't know how that works when we're getting into access by parking lot on a complex.
I will say that in recent memory, I'm racking my brain with the apartments that we've reviewed in my tenure with the city. And I can't really think of one apartment complex, multi-building complex, where we didn't have 2 points of access.
There's 2 points of access to this particular apartment to the south, and we're not talking about this, so I should probably leave them alone. But as they start building northward or wherever they go with it, they connect via parking lot.
Typically,
so I mean, you could kind of have those 3 buildings out on an island. Yeah, put it this way, kind of the way they did, what's the one over on Centennial Wimmer did, and then they built towards the Legion and they kind of pushed it back farther, and to access it, you went through the parking lots. It's not like they brought them out on Shepherd.
Right. That's not necessarily something that we would allow to happen again.
Okay. I'm trying to get my head straight on this because there's some work. There's definitely some work.
There's definitely work to be done here. And I would like to remind the applicants that while you do show a great deal of the wetlands being preserved, keep in mind with your density calculations that as currently written in code, you are only allowed to count 25% of your wetlands toward your density. Otherwise, it is all excluded from available land, your net density calculations. So I don't know if you've considered that as part of this particular layout. What I've heard from a couple of commissioners is that, the density may be challenging, especially on this particular site. So I would encourage you to take that to heart. Definitely design is going to be paramount to this particular development. But in terms of density under the current code, you are not allowed to use more than 25% of the wetlands in your density calculations.
Oh, yeah.
But yeah, that's noted. That's not something that we have looked at yet, because as far as the percentage of wetlands goes, that's something we can look into.
I do applaud you though, you something?
No, you're good.
I do applaud you. I mean, you're coming forward. You're being as transparent as you can with the neighbors there that are affected to the north. Obviously, the apartments probably don't have that much concern. Just continue to keep working with staff. It is conceptual, whether, we see a lot of things that never work out in the end, and I'm not discouraging you, but continue to work with staff because it's a very challenging site.
And I would highly encourage the applicants to have those conversations with the DOT, with the water and sewer utility, with DNR early in the process, if this does move forward, because, we as staff and as presented to the Plan Commission are going to be relying heavily on those approvals being part of your application submissions. Now, as far as the comprehensive plan is concerned, that is step one. You will need to go through that process before we can even get to, talking about combining the property. Well, actually, you can combine the properties now, but you'd have to go through a rezone, and you have to make sure that rezone request is in compliance with the comprehensive plan. As presented here, though, this concept would require a comprehensive plan amendment before you move forward with any other development. So keep in mind the multiple steps for review processes, build that into your timelines, so that you are aware that this is going to take multiple steps, and it may take a year or more before we are at the final building permit submission stage.
Creative, though. Like I said, I'm very surprised the road even came to the south. So.
And of course, one more wrench in this is that our zoning code update is anticipated to be adopted at the beginning of next year. So you may be looking at different code regulations when you're going forward with your development plans. We are looking to post those regulations for public comment this week, and that will be available on the website.
Okay. Any last words?
I just want to thank everyone. Obviously, we want to make this work. We're trying to, address everyone's concerns, bring forth something that works. It's a unique property. Long, skinny, lots, yet you're up against 27th Street. The portion up against 20th Street is zone B4. I mean, it's zone commercial. So that's what we're trying to propose here, but yet we're also trying to blend it into the single family around it. We got the apartments with the commercial up front, which I think is a good fit for 27th Street. And then we turn into the condos, townhomes towards the back to kind of blend into the single family. So we're really trying to find a balance here that works and makes this project viable out here. So we appreciate all the comments very much. It helps us greatly here, and we'll take a look at it, and we'll be in touch.
Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thanks for your patience, everybody. It's kind of been a long night, I know that. So, okay, that got us through 8D. Announcements. Boy, will we even see each other by Thanksgiving?
Yep, you've got a meeting on the 23rd.
Oh, well, then I won't wish you a happy Thanksgiving. I'll save that for next time.
I do have a question for the Plan Commission to consider, because we are getting very, very close to the end of the zoning code update process, and we do have one more public review before we put it to formal consideration for the Plan Commission. I have that tentatively scheduled for the very next meeting. However, that agenda is longer than tonight's agenda. So I would like to know whether the Plan Commission would prefer to include that at the end of what is already a pretty lengthy agenda. If you'd like to schedule a special meeting either immediately before, like we did with that one time in December, where we convene at 5 o'clock, then end at about 10 to 6 to allow for people to kind of take a break before we start the regular meeting. Or a third option is to schedule a meeting on an altogether different night than we would normally meet.
Nice. It's either, my opinion, either before or a separate meeting.
For flexibility, can we have a separate meeting but virtual?
Well, if we do it before the scheduled plan commission meeting on the 23rd, we would be starting at 5 o'clock. So having,
I'm talking if it's a different date.
if it's a different date, there might be some challenges to that. I'd have to check with legal.
Yeah, I just wonder, because sometimes when it's virtual, it gives you more accessibility and flexibility within your schedule. If it's before and after, it just takes more work.
Yeah, I'd have to check with legal because of the public meeting requirements.
Yeah, okay.
I like before.
Before 5 o'clock, can everybody do, or most people do 5 o'clock?
And the mayor's gonna buy pizza for that.
Well, I will treat you.
I'm in.
No, the mayor.
I can figure that out.
Well, we can talk offline about what you prefer, but I will absolutely be willing to provide food. In fact, I've already gotten the okay to do so.
Starbucks here, no food.
Okay, I think that's
So,
good direction.
Special meeting, 5 o'clock on the 23rd.
As it turns out, this next item was the trickiest thing to do last time because Dawn wasn't here. Nobody knew what to do.
Never thought of that. Who was the one who stepped up?
I don't know. Probably Don. Adjourn. Oh, you know what? You gotta look at your minutes.
I don't think.
Seibert moved to adjourn the meeting and Alderman Lorik
I
seconded.
knew it came from the right. But anyways, is there something else going on in the city I missed? The farmers markets are done. We're kind of idle for just a little bit. We got lighting of the square coming up in December, but that's ways off. So, turkey trot's going to happen Thanksgiving morning over at the Preserve, collecting non-perishables and canned goods. Local food pantry, St. Stephen's. So if you can take some time to join us, great. If you'd like to bring in your donations early, we can figure out how to get them there as well. All right. Motion to adjourn.
Willow moves to adjourn at 8:13.
Seibert seconds.
Roll call, beginning with me. Aye.
Rizikowski, aye.
Ladani, aye.
Seibert, aye.
Campbell, aye. And I.
Sullivan, aye.
Willow, aye.
Lorik, aye. Great. Thank you, staff. Do appreciate it as always. Great job. That was a lot. So we did good. All right.